I was born with the opposite of a guardian angel. Whatever it is has a name, but not in any language that I know. Its name makes a sound inside my head, but disappears off my tongue when I open my mouth. Ineffable, indescribable, insidious. It would follow me around as a child, dragging its feet, clinging to my back with awkward, clumsy hands. And I recall whining to my mother, "I don't like it, I don't like it." And she would ask, "What is it you don't like?" To which I would reply by putting my hands over my chest and torso, pathetically sobbing, "This feeling in here." My unwanted companion seemed content. For a while, my parents were concerned I was sick, but there were no physical symptoms of what this thing was doing to me. It attached itself to me, a gargoyle clinging to my little form, weighing me down, its tail always around my neck. As I grew up, I fought with it constantly. Any time I achieved any kind of happiness, it would wither and sulk, upset and brooding, waiting for a chance to steal my joy away from itself. I was angry. I would insult it constantly, talk back at it, trying to chase it away, but all it did was cling harder and breathe my hatred right back into my ear in a silent voice too terrible to be human. My father often snapped at me to quit talking to myself, that it was weird and frightening and he didn't like it. So I did my best to carry on as any child would, occupying myself with the pursuit of art and going through several books a week. I went through my fantasy phase when I was 8 years old. Aragon was a favourite of mine. I studied drawing animals. I excelled at everything. And for a very brief time in my life, I was okay. Then it grew jealous. It took away my favourite things from me. I felt less enjoyment towards the things I previously loved. I became disillusioned with the world, dragging myself through the last years of elementary school, wondering why I bothered with poorly written reports and pathetic poster making in class. I began to sleep less. The thing would curl on top of me at night, crushing me downwards with an infinite exhaustion that persisted without the luxury of sleep. I slept later. It kept me awake for fun. I tried to sleep early. It would give me nightmares. I gradually deteriorated, becoming anxious and unstable. That made it happy. It held itself a little straighter and seemed to enjoy itself just to spite me. I slept even less. Sometimes I didn't sleep at all. I cried often, but always in secret. When someone asked me what was wrong, how could I possibly articulate this horrid, empty absence of feeling? That this terrible creature was leeching the life from me. I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't hold still, and the world seemed too much, too bright, too full of life and activity, and I was becoming slow, stumbling, unable to keep up. I ripped paper, snapped pencils, destroyed little things, and when that wasn't enough, I cut my hair, scratched at my skin, and hit hard enough to leave bruises on my knuckles. When I was 13, after a mandated psychological evaluation, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, panic disorder, and possible risk of psychosis. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do, how to fix any of it. Without me noticing, the thing had grown and grown, and now it stood taller than me. How had I not noticed? When had I become so small? I was immediately put into therapy. My first therapist was a soft-spoken young woman who calmed my nerves and reassured me, a pleasant feeling that only lasted the hour I was with her. I spoke about the awful creature with her, and she pretended to understand. She called it a Kremlin. I became addicted to the reassurance she could give me. In her office, the thing would remain quietly in the corner, like an ill-behaved dog on a timeout. My second therapist was a man with greying hair and wire-framed glasses, who always wore a suit. He made me nervous, and the creature loved that. He was a Freud-loving moron, that man. I always had the distinct feeling he was looking down on me with impatience and disinterest. During our sessions, the thing played like a child in his office, showing me this and that and making slimy remarks. By the end, I could remember everything it touched in that room. The porcelain mug painted with a blue dragonfly, a child's drawing of Garfield the cat, an old doll in a shallow box, planks of wood under the desk, the little pink Freud book, the painting of a girl with yellow flowers, and another of bicycles, the patterns on the stained glass windows. My third therapist was an old woman with silver hair and shaking hands. There were ancient children's toys in the waiting room and magazines from years ago. Her office filled with houseplants. They were all plastic. I sat on the edge of the chaise lounge, eyeing the shelves of crumbling books. She also had a copy of the little pink Freud book. The thing crouched in a dusty corner, reaching out to fiddle with tired toys in a dirty, forgotten tub. We spoke for a few minutes, then she prescribed me several medications and sent me on my way, and thus began my Xanax addiction. I was 15. The thing couldn't touch me when I was high. I floated face down on clouds of impenetrable calm and euphoria, and it sat sullenly, silent and harmless. As soon as I came back around, it was there, hovering like a dark cloud. My mother and her doctor teamed up to get me clean. The withdrawals left me bedridden. The thing would cackle and laugh, sneering that I got what I deserved as it feasted on my misery. After I got clean, my body was fine again, but I had lost the will to live. The thing towered over me wherever I went, and the weight of its shadow over me was palpable. Taking care of myself became impossible. This thing, this creature was famine. It starved my soul to sustain itself. My immortal soul, tiny, emaciated, and pitifully weak, was dragging my mortal body around like a corpse. I felt a perpetual chill inside me, as if my heart had given up on the idea of warmth. So I stepped in front of traffic. It didn't work. My mother came to me in hospital when I was lucid again, holding a crumpled piece of paper with ripped edges, weeping and demanding an explanation. The only other time I had seen her shed a tear was when her father died. I looked down at barely legible, erratic handwriting. God, this is hard. I don't want to be alive, just postpone my existence. I wish I could stop or start my heart, but I will. I want to put myself in a Xanax-induced coma. Breathing hurts, everything is so heavy. I'm just so tired. I don't want to be here anymore. Just let me go home. Let me go to sleep without dreaming. Let the nightmares leave me alone. I promise I'll take all my medication properly. I promise I won't relapse. I promise. Please just forgive me for now. Just let me lie down until I can stand up again, and I'll apologize to you then. Okay? It's so cold and lonely here, but I want you to go away. Don't look at me. Don't touch me. Don't ever come back. Just go and live your life. I can't be saved. I'll make my way somehow. I won't die. I promise, so you don't have to worry. Just go, and I'll stay here, and you don't need to think of me, because nothing can help me now. Only time will break this horrible spell, and I'll be able to breathe again, and maybe I will come find you one of those days, but please, just go. I cried. My mother cried harder. She held me in her arms. For the first time in a long time, I felt love and longing in my weak heart. I clutched the front of my hospital gown, amazed. I was crying, and I could feel it all, feel everything like blood in my veins. I looked at the yellow roses beside my bed, and they were beautiful and fragile and full of life. My mother left, promising to be back soon with my favourite sweets. I kept looking around, tears still pouring down my face without a sound, and finally realised that the creature was gone. Not even the faintest whisper of its shadow hung over me. I had survived it. I sobbed helplessly, overcome with immense relief. My mother returned with ice cream and chocolates, and I ate it all, crying over the joy a single piece of candy could give me. My body protested at the sudden intake, but I didn't care. I was feeding my soul, that tiny little essence who had been starved for so long. If I had to try and describe it in words, it would be like if you just finished a boss battle with 1 HP left and your character gives you a little thumbs up from where they're lying on the ground. With the disappearance of the terrible thing, my feelings came back, one by one. I went back into therapy, pointing to little faces on feelings charts and reading the words underneath each out loud, excited like a child learning their first words. But soon, one overwhelming emotion swallowed me whole. Guilt. The person who was driving the vehicle I had stepped in front of had killed himself. They said shortly after I had woken up in hospital, he went insane talking of a monstrous creature that hounded him constantly until he agreed to finish the job. He showed signs of sleeplessness and obsession, and he had apparently stalked me online and sought out my personal information, which might have been normal for someone who almost unwillingly assisted a suicide, had he not been delusional and his intent not been murderous. He was going to find me and kill me, but somehow couldn't bring himself to do it and killed himself instead. He had 2 daughters and a wife. I sent them flowers. I tried to call them, but no one answered or called me back. I myself became rather obsessed. I eventually managed to track them down. I had no idea how to approach them. One morning, I pretended to be a student interested in a career in childcare and visited the daycare the youngest daughter went to. I asked one of the staff if they had any difficulties, and she mentioned the girl refusing to sleep during nap time and instead choosing to converse and argue with her imaginary friend. I left and never came back. Never tried to look for them again. The slightest possibility of facing that thing again sent me fleeing for safety. So I lived with this guilt. The guilt of knowing some little girl had inherited the monster I was supposed to take to the grave with me. The rest of my life in peace in exchange for hers. I cheated both life and death. I wonder what will happen if this girl dies.